The year is 2013, and a quiet legal battle in Florida revealed something most people never questioned until it's too late. A homeowner wasn't fined for neglect, damage, or unpaid bills. She was targeted because she no longer needed the system. She generated her own power, collected her own water, and stepped outside the infrastructure most people depend on without thinking. The response wasn't curiosity, it was enforcement. That moment exposes a deeper truth most survivalists overlook. Independence itself can be treated as a threat. Now hold on to that, because what follows is not theory. It's a system that has already worked in extreme conditions, freezing winters, economic crises, and total grid failures. This is about a structure designed to sustain human life without relying on fragile networks. Not partially, completely. And once you understand how it works, you start to see modern housing for what it is. Efficient, yes, but deeply dependent. This is not just architecture. This is survival engineering. The reason this matters becomes clear when systems fail in real life. In February 2021, a winter storm crippled Texas. Collapsing power infrastructure across the state, millions were left without electricity. Heating systems stopped, water lines froze, people died in their own homes, not because they were unprepared individuals, but because their homes themselves were not built to survive without external support. Contrast that with a different environment entirely, high desert regions of New Mexico, where temperatures drop well below freezing. In those same conditions, there were homes maintaining stable indoor temperatures without furnaces, without electric heaters, without any connection to a grid. The difference wasn't luck, it was design. This is where the concept of self-sustaining structures moves from curiosity to necessity. A house that cannot function without constant external input is not shelter. It is a liability during disruption. The origin of this idea begins with a problem no one wanted to solve. In the early 1970s, a young architect named Michael Reynolds started asking a question that went against everything his profession was built on. Why are homes incapable of sustaining life on their own? At the time, the United States was facing an energy crisis. Oil shortages made heating expensive. Housing costs were rising. Meanwhile, waste, particularly used car tires, was accumulating at an alarming rate. These tires were nearly indestructible, sitting in landfills with no long-term solution. Reynolds saw two problems and realized they could solve each other. He began experimenting with compacting earth into discarded tires, creating dense, durable blocks. Each one weighed hundreds of pounds and could be stacked into walls that were structurally sound and resistant to decay. Instead of seeing waste, he saw building material. Instead of designing for convenience, he designed for independence. What he created wasn't just a house, it was a closed-loop system. The way these structures regulate temperature changes everything. Traditional homes rely on active systems, furnaces, air conditioners, and constant energy input. When those systems fail, the house fails with them. The innovation here is passive regulation. These structures use thermal mass. Thick walls made from earth-packed materials absorb heat during the day and release it slowly at night. This isn't a new concept. It's been used for centuries in desert architecture, but Reynolds refined it into a complete system. Sunlight enters through large, strategically placed windows. Instead of heating air, it heats the mass of the walls and floors. That stored energy radiates back into the space as temperatures drop. The result is stability. It's not spikes and drops, but a consistent internal climate regardless of external extremes. Cooling works on the same principle. Air is drawn through underground channels where the earth maintains a constant temperature. By the time that air enters the living space, it has already been moderated naturally. No compressors, no electricity. Just physics. This is the difference between a system that fights nature and one that uses it. Water is treated as a resource to be cycled, not consumed once and discarded. Modern homes use treated water for everything, then dispose of it immediately. Drinking water is flushed down toilets. Clean water irrigates lawns. It's efficient only as long as supply chains remain intact. A self-sustaining system treats water differently. Rainfall becomes the primary source. It is collected, filtered, and used for drinking and washing. After that first use, it doesn't leave the system. It moves into plant beds, where natural filtration occurs. The water is then reused for flushing. Only after multiple cycles does it exit, often repurposed for outdoor irrigation. This approach reduces dependency dramatically. Also changes how you think about scarcity. Instead of asking how much water you can access, You start asking how many times you can use the water you already have. Food production becomes part of the living space itself. One of the most overlooked vulnerabilities in modern life is food supply. Most households rely entirely on external systems for daily nutrition. Disrupt those systems, and the consequences are immediate. These structures integrate food production into the home itself. Indoor growing spaces use natural sunlight, controlled temperatures, and recycled water to sustain crops year-round. This isn't small-scale gardening. In some cases, it produces a significant portion of a household's food needs. The key here is proximity. Food is no longer something that travels through a supply chain. It is something that grows within arm's reach. Energy becomes a supplement, not a requirement, because heating and cooling demands are drastically reduced. Energy needs shrink as well. A modest solar setup is often enough to power essential systems: lighting, refrigeration, communication devices. This is a critical shift. Instead of building a house that requires massive energy input, the design minimizes demand first. Generation becomes easier because consumption is already low. This is the principle most people miss. Independence is not about producing more. It's about needing less. The concerns around materials deserve an honest examination. Using unconventional materials raises valid questions, particularly regarding health and safety. Tires, for example, contain chemical compounds that can be harmful under certain conditions. However, context matters. When these materials are sealed, packed, and isolated from exposure to sunlight and air, their behavior changes. Studies examining indoor air quality in such environments have found levels comparable to, and sometimes better than, conventional homes built with modern synthetic materials. This does not mean zero risk. No system is without trade-offs. But it highlights an important point. Many standard building materials also carry risks that are rarely questioned because they are widely accepted. The real barrier is not engineering, it's regulation. Despite proven performance, these structures often face legal obstacles. Building codes are designed around standardized materials and methods. Anything outside that framework is treated as a risk, regardless of actual performance. There are valid reasons for regulation. Poor construction can lead to real harm. But there is also a financial dimension. Entire industries depend on traditional construction methods and ongoing utility consumption. Structure that eliminates monthly bills disrupts that model. Result is a system where innovation must fight for space within rules not designed to accommodate it. What you can apply from this immediately in your own life? You don't need to build an entirely new home to begin reducing dependency. The principles behind these systems can be adapted in smaller ways. Start by understanding your vulnerabilities. Identify the systems your daily life depends on: electricity, water, food, heating. Awareness is the first step toward resilience. Incorporate thermal mass where possible. Materials like stone, brick, or even water containers placed strategically can stabilize indoor temperatures. Secure alternative water sources. Even small-scale rain collection can provide a buffer during shortages. Explore decentralized energy options. Portable solar setups are becoming more accessible and can reduce reliance on the grid. Most importantly, rethink waste. Materials and resources that are discarded can often be repurposed in ways that increase self-sufficiency. The broader lesson goes beyond construction, and this is not just about buildings, it's about mindset. Modern systems are built for efficiency and scale, not resilience. They work exceptionally well until they don't. History has shown repeatedly that disruptions are not rare events. They are inevitable. The question is not if systems will fail, but when. A structure that can sustain life independently is not just an alternative, it is a form of insurance against those failures. And once you understand that, you begin to see independence not as a luxury, but as a strategic advantage. The blueprint already exists. The question is whether you will use it. There are places today where people live without utility bills, without reliance on centralized systems, and without sacrificing comfort. These are not experimental prototypes. They're functioning environments that have stood the test of time. The knowledge is available. The methods are proven. What remains is the decision to apply them. Because at the end of the day, survival is not about reacting to crises. It's about building systems that make those crises irrelevant. If this changed how you think about survival and self-sufficiency, Subscribe to Intelligent Survival for more deep, practical breakdowns like this. Share this with someone who still believes independence is impossible. And stay ready, because the strongest position is the one where you no longer need permission to survive.